The only thing that increases in value if you share it is knowledge.
The Interplanetary Podcast. The exploration of space for the benefit of all mankind. Your hosts here in London, Matthew Russell and Jamie Franklin.
Oh yeah, baby Pillinger.
Colin Pillinger. Born on this day, Matt, 9th of May, 1943.
He comes up with our chat today when we're talking to Anthony and Jake from Off Nominal, or at least the Beagle does.
Yeah, this is it. We've got a very special interview with the lads later on from across the pond.
Our special friends from across the pond.
One in Canada, one in the States.
In Philly.
Philly.
We'll go into. So, yeah, I tell you what is very cool that they should be on this week, because it is actually, it comes around quickly. It's actually Space News Week, our one every 4 podcast. And it happens to be, I think, one of the busiest weeks ever in space.
Really is.
So that's all we're going to do. Jamie, we'll leave all the big news for Anthony and Jake to break down for us in the interview that comes after the news that happened after we spoke to them.
Oh my God. Where do we start?
Yes, so much has happened since we last talked, Jamie. I was actually on BBC yesterday, BBC 5 Live, talking about the first news story.
You texted me, didn't you, and said, can you get on the radio in 10 minutes? And I was like, no, I can't. I've got a meeting. Damn it.
I know. So, yeah, Tom Cruise is going to space. So
what?
There's a film he did back in 2002 where he's the narrator on Space Station 3D, which is in a lot of these sort of IMAX theatres that are at things like the Science Museum, stuff like that.
Yes.
Well, he's just doing another one of those. He's just doing a NASA, NASA and Tom Cruise are collaborating. It's like, yeah, so what, really? And then it's like, no, he's actually flying to the International Space Station to do a film.
That is mental.
But luckily, in the back of my head, Jamie, I was thinking, is it that crazy? And it's like, yes, NASA first action film aboard the ISS. And I was thinking, actually, that's not true, because our fellow Brit, Richard Garriott, son of Owen Garriott, when he went up, which of course is very similar, he wasn't an astronaut. He was a software developer with a lot of money in his back pocket. He went up and filmed the 2012 Apogee of Fear.
Apogee of Fear, of course.
So, which is only 12 minutes long, and is obviously probably a bit of a silly film, but it's a film nevertheless shot on the ISS, a work of fiction.
I've got so many questions though. So, is Tom Cruise? Is he in training? What's the score?
Well, this came up quite a bit on the chat. It was like, you'll have to do 2 years of training. You'll have to learn to fly. You'll have to do all the swimming pool stuff, which I think is nonsense. I think if you're just visiting the ISS, you don't have to learn.
Yeah, they're not going to be asking him to do any experiments.
Yeah, exactly. He's not going to have to go outside and do a bit of welding. He might come out on the ISS, but I doubt he's going to egress. So
good.
Thanks. He's I would imagine he'll have to do like 6 months of training. He'll have to pass like a basic medical for definites, right? He is 58. But remember, John Glenn was 77 when he went up.
Yeah, so, and Tom Cruise is he's still in pretty good shape.
Yeah. He's pretty well. He's actually 57. But he's almost 58. But he's in great shape. He's obviously super disciplined. So
when he still does his own stunts. So when he gets fired into space towards Mars, is that going to be him or a double?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, mate. I just don't know. I mean, maybe that will be most of the training. We'll be telling him what he can and what he can't do, basically.
God, how exciting! Imagine someone saying that to you. All right, Tom. This time we're actually going to send you to space.
Weirdly, I mean, It'd be odd for Tom Cruise, because when he's aboard the ISS, he really will be. Everyone just won't give a monkeys that it's him. They'll all be like, actually, you're kind of in the way, mate.
Yeah.
When you look at the space tourists that have been before, it's actually astronauts are quite snobby towards them. So, for example, Dennis Tito, who was the first ever commercial astronaut to go on the ISS.
Yeah,
he's part of the company that send people up there. I can't remember off the top of my head. They're called Space Adventures Inc. He was one of the first people to go up, Tito. And after doing the Russian part of training, when they came over to NASA to do the American part, to train for the American section, NASA sent them home and the cosmonauts home, saying no, that all the astronauts refused to train with Dennis. That's how snobby they were about it. So
yeah,
it was.
Thing is, I can totally understand it. You're there to do a job. It's not some fishbowl.
No,
I just think they're going to be like, oh, great.
But here's
to get on
the
with
thing.
our job. But the thing is, it is going to get so many people looking at the industry that might not have been.
Yeah, the ISS has cost $170 billion, right? And it's not just American taxpayers; it's UK taxpayers, French taxpayers, Russian taxpayers, Japanese taxpayers have all put in for this. So to have someone of Tom Cruise's reach in terms of publicity is clearly a good thing. NASA understand that the outreach part of the ISS is probably its most valuable asset. So,
completely agree. Yes, it's a good thing.
So there we go. One of my favourite visitors to the ISS who wasn't an astronaut was a chap called Jack Garn. Now, Jack Garn, he was a senator at the time. So he went as he went as a kind of congressional observer. So he was a bit of a lad. He'd been a pilot and everything else. So he was kind of made of astronaut stuff. But when he got there, when he got to the ISS, he was so sick. He had such bad space sickness that the space sickness is now measured in garns.
No.
So one garn is fully space sick that you're vomiting everywhere.
Oh my God, imagine that being named after you.
So yeah, that's there we go. It's
how sick are you on a level of Franklin's? 1 or 10?
Yeah, actually, you're a bit like that on trains, aren't you?
I am. Oh God, if I read on a train, it's almost game over.
I know, it's so frustrating.
That time I was researching for the podcast, looking at the notes, and I called you, didn't I, at the end of the day, and said, "Yeah, I threw up on the train this morning."
That's the dedication at Peeps.
Yeah,
that's
there we
the dedication.
Go. We pulled into Victoria, and I thought I might be all right if I get some fresh air. No, to run to the toilet. And if you know anything about British train toilets, they're not great.
Oh no!
I always worry, really Matt, that someone's gonna, when you press the lock button, that someone's gonna just. I've seen it happen a few times.
Oh yeah! Oh no! I've seen the door open.
Forgotten to press the lock, and they're sat there on the bog.
I've seen the door open.
God.
I've seen the door open when it's not supposed to. Yeah, it's not good. It's ridiculous. It's not good, particularly when you're trying to join the Mile High Club equivalent.
Dear.
So Jamie, we should really move on because there's so much stupidly huge news, right?
Yes.
So the next news that was absolutely, I think, and I've said this right at the beginning of the year in the preview of the year, this is one of the massive bits of news. China have launched their equivalent, sort of the Orion space capsule on the maiden voyage of the Long March 5B. Now, that's actually still going on. So this capsule's gone up and it's doing this huge arc over the Earth in orbit.
It is.
And will return. So so we won't know the full results of that, but so far it's gone very, very well. And so that is the equivalent where Anthony in our little talk talks about when he went down to the Cape to see in 2014 the Orion being launched on a Delta IV Heavy.
Yeah.
Well, this mission that the Chinese have done is almost identical to that. It's their latest crewed capsule, very similar to Orion, being launched on a rocket that's actually very similar in kind of power to the Delta IV Heavy. So, very similar to the one that Anthony was talking about. But let's face it, China have got unbelievable momentum now. As in,
they're smashing it, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are. I reckon we can say that they've kind of overtaken Russia here, because they've had a successful moon landing. This year they've got a Mars mission that's still going ahead. They've now got a really serious human spaceflight program where this space capsule replaces their kind of larger version of the Soyuz, which is a kind of licensed variant of the Soyuz called the Shenzhou. So the Shenzhou is being replaced by this much more capable. At the moment it's not even named, but it's kind of got this very long name in Chinese that translates as Chinese Next Generation People's Spacecraft.
Yeah.
So it's not catchy. It's not great. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit
doesn't
like
roll off the tongue, but
it's
that's
a bit
okay.
like Space Launch System. Boring titles like that. Come on, peeps. There's got to be a better way. Boaty McBoatface. Those kind of things would be so much cooler. That would get people talking about the space program. Come on.
I think it should be the listeners of the Interplanetary podcast that should come up with these names.
Yeah, totally, and just send them in.
I'll send a couple of tweets out. I'll make it happen.
I mean, we already had our listeners name the European Mars rover the Franklin rover. So
exactly. Come
on, and
that's the power that our listeners have.
That's the power that you've had. This is awesome. So yes, China really, really pushing for it now. So this big new space capsule got a couple of modules, a bit like the Orion. But what makes it really special, and actually better than Orion, is that it's got enough Delta V to be able to fly to the moon and fly back again. Whereas actually the Orion doesn't really have that capability. It can't get itself into orbit around the moon, drop off astronauts and come back again. So it's not Orion isn't really as capable as the Apollo command module. So it's like but this one is the Chinese one is. So we've got this race now. The Chinese, I wouldn't bet against the Chinese putting feet on the moon before the Americans now.
Ooh, I'm going to go with you on that, actually.
The Chinese are going to do it in the 2030s. I've already said that. But the thought of Americans actually getting people on the moon this decade, I don't think that's a done deal. I hope it's something like 2026 or 2028 or something round about that. But if the Chinese are breathing down their neck and then end up beating them, wow, it's going to be huge. But yeah, I think we're sort of entering a new space race for real. And of course, then there's Elon Musk as well, who might just try and put people on the moon just for a laugh with his Starship. But who knows?
Exactly.
Who knows about Starship? So, really sad one, and this is sad, a little bit worrying. Is the passing of Yevgeny Mikrin?
Yes,
who wasn't that old, born in 1955. This is what Putin said about him. This is how important this guy is. Yevgeny Mikrin made an invaluable contribution to Russian science and engineering, and as well as the national space program, he rightly enjoyed strong authority and respect among his partners, friends, and colleagues. We will always keep the memory of this talented man who was dedicated to calling and his country's interests in our hearts. Yeah,
there you go, Vladimir there.
Yeah, Vladimir Putin. Yevgeny Mikrin, chief designer. This is our age's Korolev.
Yeah.
Has died at 64 from COVID-19.
It's very sad, yeah.
So, and the really crazy thing about that is that he was a healthy man when he attended the Soyuz spacecraft lifting off in April 9th for the Expedition 62 from Baikonur. So he was healthy there, and there's a suspicion that he actually caught the virus in Baikonur, which is well, of course,
that's not good.
That's not good. Yeah. So luckily, the astronauts that have gone there seem to be outside of that incubation period, so I don't think they contracted it. But I think you could call that a pretty near miss.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? But that's very sad news. Rest in peace.
Sad. Yeah, super sad. I think that's a terrible blow for the Russian space program. If I'm honest,
let me tell you, one door closes and another door opens. That's life, and we welcome the birth of a new Musk drink.
Yeah, Musk drink.
Would you like to announce the name of the baby boy?
I think the baby boy is called XAI-A12. Do you want me to explain it?
I know, but I'd love you to explain it. For anyone who doesn't know, Grimes explained it to us.
What does the X stand? What does the X stand for?
I think that's
unknown, isn't it?
Both, unknown, as in sort of like not male, not female, just a person.
Yeah. AE, that is the ancient kind of archaic way of saying AI, so artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
But it also translates as love, apparently.
Yeah, there we go.
But my favourite bit, and this is super nerdy, my favourite plane is without a doubt Blackbird, right?
Sure. And
the A12 is the predecessor to that. It's the kind of non-weaponized version, reconnaissance aircraft version. Of the
so it's super fast and amazing, but not hostile.
The A12, of course, the A in the A12 actually did stand for Archangel, and it turns out that Archangel is one of Grimes' favourite songs.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, which Archangel song are we talking here? Do we know?
Do you know, I have no idea, Jamie. But I've got an amazing story that I only became aware of last week when I was having a drink with Hot John and Jim King.
Oh, double whammy.
And they reminded me of the time where Grimes was rehearsing in one of the rehearsal rooms that I looked after.
Yeah.
And I spent a couple of days with Grimes setting up her live playback system with her. So I went in and I showed her how to get the sound card all hooked up and get it all working properly. So, and she was lovely. She was, I remember it well now. And it's like, oh my God, was that Grimes? And it was like, yeah, it was Grimes. I was like,
well, Matt,
oh right, of course it was.
You remember that I famously interviewed her for Roland a while back. Yeah, so there we go. So
we are, fully connected.
We feel very connected.
Yeah. So Elon, if you're listening, which of course you are, because I know that you get a lot of your information about space from the podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
Your wife will vouch for us. She'll tell us what lovely guys we are. So yeah. And
she's great.
Come
look
on
after
the show.
her, Mum.
Yeah,
look after her, Musk.
Look after Elon.
Chill out a bit.
Yeah, chillax. I think you need to chillax. I think you've been overworking because you've gone a little bit mental.
I think he's just pretending. I think he's just
pretending to be
being
mental.
sarcastic.
Sarcastic.
Yeah.
Genius. Yeah. Right, final bit of news, Jamie, which is absolutely ace.
Better be.
It is a new paper that's been doing the rounds. And what an amazing paper it is. Because there's kind of like a double whammy in it. So a naked eye triple system with a non-accreting black hole at the centre of it all. And that's the actual paper's called a naked eye triple system with a non-accreting black hole in the inner binary. and that's by Rivenius et al. And they're from the European Organisation for Astronomical Research in the Southern Hemisphere.
Right, should we break it down, Matt? ESO. Because, I mean, of course you know that title
yes, well,
needs a bit of breakdown, doesn't it?
A little bit of breakdown. So, yes, there's an unusual system out there, but it is visible eye. So you can look out and actually see these faint stars up in the night sky. Actually, I don't think you can from the northern hemisphere. You'd have to go to the southern hemisphere to look to the constellation of Telescopium. And it's a naked eye triple system. And you look out, and the system is called HR 6819. Another brilliant name. And they've used the ESO's La Silla Observatory in Chile.
Yes.
And it's revealed it's a hierarchical triple, right?
Oh.
And what that means, there's a classical BE star, so this isn't quite a supergiant star, big blue star with a bit of an emission line in it, and that's on the outside, and that's orbiting another star. But what that star turns out to be is actually a binary system. So the inner binary system is a 40-day binary where these two objects are orbiting each other over a 40-day period. One of them is a B3 III star, a big blue star, and it's got an unseen companion. And that's this unseen companion is the funny bit. It's like, well, is it what mass must it be for them to be able to do this kind of orbital dance? And can you have a star that's dim enough that we wouldn't be able to see it from here? And the answer is no. So this rapidly rotating blue-white star, this star that's orbiting this other very dim object, it's estimated to be about 50 million years old, this star, and it's going at 50 kilometers a second. It's 6.5 times bigger than the mass of the sun. and it's 449 times brighter, which is pretty bright.
Wow.
And it's spinning around. So the radial velocity, 61 kilometers a second, of the inner star and its minimum probable mass of 5 solar masses means that the unseen object must have a mass of about 4.2 solar masses. And therefore, it would be bright enough if it was a stellar object. So it must be a black hole.
Oh my God!
So this black hole in HR 6819 is now the closest known black hole to the sun. The only known black hole in a system that's visible with the naked eye.
That is cool, isn't it?
That's
you can
insanely
look up
cool.
In the southern hemisphere, look at those triples and say, well, I can't see the black hole, but I know it's there.
I know it's there. Yeah. And there's another result to that, of course, is that they know that there's these quiet black holes. The thing about black holes, they can either have this accretion disk where they're kind of feeding on something, gas has fallen in and got superheated, and you can actually see these things in X-rays, like the Cygnus X1, not the Rush song, but the black hole that's 6 times further away than this one in the constellation of Cygnus, the one that's very, very obvious in the summer sky.
Yeah.
The Cygnus X1 is a very bright source of X-rays, and now we know that it's a black hole, but it's feeding on dust, and that dust is getting very hot and emitting X-rays. But this black hole isn't feeding on anything. Hasn't got an accretion disk, so you can't see it really. It's just completely silent but massive. Wow. Silent but massive.
That's cool, isn't it?
It's super cool.
I love that story, Matt.
But well, I mean, the main thing is, it's like now we know there might be lots of these black holes out there, and he says and this is what Rivenius said. He says the fact that it's so close actually means that it cannot be very uncommon. So,
you're right. Yeah.
So it means they've only found a few dozen black holes like this, but they suspect there might be. Guess how many in our galaxy?
How many black holes in our galaxy?
Of this type, yeah. They found about 24, 25, something like that. But how many do you think there actually are in the galaxy?
Well, I always thought there was one. Call me stupid. I always thought there was one black hole at the center of every galaxy.
Nah, that's but that's the supermassive black hole. That black hole has got millions of solar masses.
Oh.
Whereas this black hole's only 4 times bigger is only 4 times more massive than the sun. It's barely a black hole, but
Well, I'll say 3 billion then.
Well, you might be about right, yeah. But there might be billions of these things in the galaxy.
Do you see how I went from 1 to 3 billion very quickly?
I did. Do you know what? Apparently, that kind of central area where the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy is, apparently that might be swarming with billions of smaller black holes. These kind of stellar remnants. Very, very exciting. Yes, but it's only 1,120 light years away. But
we'll be able to get there, Matt.
Yeah. It's drifting away by 15 kilometers a second. So even if you're in a really fast spacecraft, it would still be going away from you. Oh, God. Jamie, enough of this. Shall we listen? Enough. Shall we listen to our lovely friends, Jake and Anthony? And I love them because they're very funny men as well.
Great people, great podcasters. Give them a listen.
The Interplanetary Podcast, putting the ace back into space.
We're joined on the podcast by two youngsters from the space podcasting scene. You know, I like to think of them as our friends across the Atlantic. They are Jake and Anthony of Off Nominal, We Martians, and Main Engine Cutoff podcasts. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Welcome.
Hello.
It has been a long time. We want to first start by asking, how are you? What is the situation where you are? Are you both okay?
Yes, I am okay. Thank you for asking. It's pretty okay over where I am. I'm in Vancouver in Canada, and we didn't get hit too bad by any coronavirus stuff, so the weather's been nice, and we're just kind of chilling at home and enjoying a little bit of change of pace, I guess. But good. I mean, how about you, Anthony?
I'm good. We're snuggled right up.
You're closer to some of the scary stuff.
Yeah,
so.
we're close to the mayhem, but Philly itself has been okay. But it's just our friends an hour north and east that have been hit the hardest. It's weird that it hasn't made it to our area as much, but for me, I am always working from home anyway, so this is not a big change. My wife works at the hospital, still a thing that happens, so not a huge difference day to day, which makes it somewhat weirder in that like personal life hasn't changed a lot, but the entire world has. But I am encouraged by now there is space news, because for the first month of this, there was just no space news. And for the last couple of weeks,
news. It was
terrible
the center's
space
closed,
news.
This center's closed.
All of your favorite companies shut down. Everyone's laid
canceled.
off. Yeah. But things are like,
I think
everyone's adjusting now.
This is what we want to know from you. Yeah, we want this to be a positive show. You can tell us all of the things that are happening that we don't know about over here.
But before you start, Anthony, I've got one quick question. I've recently become obsessed with the program. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh,
is that representative of your home city?
Yes, yes. In many ways, it is. So that show started when I was going to college in Florida. So I would watch it and be like, "Oh, this is a little piece of home," even though it is the most extreme kind of cartoonized version of, but I do feel like I have a couple of uncles that could easily have appeared in that show, no problem at all. I don't know if you've seen
Letterkenny of Philadelphia. Is that what it is?
Oh, I think Letterkenny. What is it?
Letterkenny?
Leonard Kenny? Is that a guy from a band?
Well, do you know what's ironic?
bizarre.
That's the clip I sent today to Matt, because I was like,
I'd never heard of him
this
before.
Is genius.
I'd never heard of him before.
Yeah.
This is twice. That just goes that thing of things where people say something and then it happens twice in a day. Yeah, you've actually done it.
It's a glitch in the Matrix. I love it.
Right there.
It is incredible. I love that. So anyone who hasn't seen Letterkenny, get on it. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's a really good show. It's funny.
That is the Canadian version of Always Sunny, I think. Which was first.
Wow,
I thought Always Sunny was first.
Yeah, Sunny's pretty old. So.
It's like on 40 seasons at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the episode where they write a letter to Chase Utley of the Philadelphia Phillies, the baseball team, but that one is very realistic.
Oh man,
I haven't seen that one. I need to get involved.
It's so good.
Matt, Matt, we should say a UK sitcom just so we can,
I'm trying to think of what would be a I think
anything good.
Oh man, The only thing I can think of that's similar to
Downton Abbey.
Downton Abbey. Come on, give me a break. I think the only thing that's similar to Always Sunny is probably something like Bottom. Or something like that.
Blimey, that is
yeah. But yeah, we haven't really got anything like that for a while.
Red Dwarf.
I don't know. Well, Red Dwarf. Yeah, we've had Red Dwarf come up a couple of times on because the music. Did you hear our interview with a guy called Stimpson who made a little video about Opportunity?
I'm a little behind. I have it in my queue, but yeah, I haven't got that yet.
He added an American added Red Dwarf theme music to our space playlist, which was a little bit mortifying that we hadn't actually thought about adding it before. But there we go.
Yeah, he was like, "What about Red Dwarf?"
Like,
like, yeah, I keep trying to get Matt to play it on the guitar. He says he knows it, but we'll see.
Oh yeah, I've been working my way through Queen albums first. I've got to get good enough. So right then, let's kick off. Tell me a piece of space news that's happened. It's been dull, but there definitely is something. I know that there's something.
Yeah,
Who wants to start?
Where do you want to start?
Well, I'm the one paying for all these moonlanders, so I feel like I should probably
true.
bring this up.
Let's get
You
the
three are just
firing.
By the way, we
coasting.
really appreciate
You're
that.
coasting off my $1 billion that I just spent on a couple of companies to do some studies of lunar landers here.
Yeah, that is so true.
So this is the thing about this. We got it. Everyone's saying NASA funded lunar landers. This is a lunar lander in motion. They funded 10 months of studies of development of lunar landers that might one day be funded to be built. But this is big news. I'm not going to try to downplay this. So we've got Blue Origin leading a team of companies, Northrop
The
Grumman,
national team.
Lockheed Martin, and Draper. It's the national team for what was the phrase, Jake?
Go something like go together, go alone, or something. like that. I can't remember now.
National team for like a national.
A national priority or something.
National
like that?
priority.
Do you think they called it the national team to kind of win over Trump? It seems to be the kind of phrasing that would work well in.
It was
the
pretty
Trump
rah-rah
administration.
because this was announced at IAC in DC
in DC,
last October, and it was a pretty Team America kind of event. So.
Oh yes.
Well, yeah, we were there for that announcement, and it. I think Anthony and I both are just like, yeah, that's a winner right there. Like this is the perfect combination of companies to address exactly what all the different stakeholders want. Like it's got that sort of the national team, the American part, but it's also got like all the different mixes of expertise, right? Because Blue Origin kind of satisfies that like kind of spicy new space feel, like it feels fresh and innovative. And then you have Lockheed's sort of heritage and expertise. Draper did navigation for Apollo stuff, so like they have like sort of a throwback. And
it was a 4-quadrant victory.
It was a 4-quadrant victory. Like Northrop's Cygnus platform is very well proven, and so it felt like a really good combo. And even right there in the audience, we were just like, yeah, that's the way that's going to go.
None of us are surprised that NASA awarded the contract to them for this. So that was the least surprising of the 3 that were picked.
Well, what was the most surprising one then?
The most surprising was the fact that Starship is involved in this at all from SpaceX. It is totally mind-blowing to me, and I did not expect this in even one sense of the word.
No, I wasn't expecting it, but I wasn't expecting it to be like a different design as well, like it with no fins and those weird rockets at the side, or were they very bright lights?
That'll keep
work it out.
Yeah, that's just this month's design iteration.
Yeah. I don't pay too much to the renders anymore. Everyone's kind of obsessing. I guess they had like these like side thrusters on it that looked like they were like side mounted thrusters way high up to avoid the plume interactions. And there was this whole debate like maybe they're lights, maybe they're thrusters. And I was kind of like, well, we'll find out.
Well, they did look more like lights. I must admit. I was thinking that they're
Who
not
knows?
thrusters, surely.
I think they're engines.
I think they're engines too.
They're
'Cause
engines.
I've been saying for a while that like the Starship's gonna make a crater every time it lands because it's so big, and that moon dust is not as it's not as stable as you'd like it to be. So I've always kind of said that was a problem, and they know it too because they've been doing some studies where they got a NASA contract to study sort of plume interactions with the lunar regolith, right? So maybe this is the result of that study is that they're like, yeah, there's no way around it. We need to put the thrusters higher up. It's kind of like how Curiosity lands, right? Because Curiosity had the sky crane, and that's the whole point, is to keep the thrusters away from the ground. So similar idea, I guess.
Maybe they could do that. They could have another starship attached to the top of one starship and then
Lower it
land
on a
with that and then drop it onto the surface and fly the other starship away.
You could, yeah.
Well, Matt, now that Elon's selling all of his possessions, maybe to raise a bit of money, we could, let him use our Interplanetary podcast logo on the side. That'll cost a few bucks.
Or maybe as we could use all our combined Patreon money. I mean, because we're talking about the power right here, aren't we? Thus four. There's a lot of money in the tin there. So we could probably...
Hundreds.
Oh, it's huge.
Maybe we could buy SpaceX off Elon if he's selling it.
He's apparently selling it. This was an underreported part this week, that he said all possessions, and nobody said, what about SpaceX?
This is it. You said
Matt,
it.
I want to go back to something you said. You said you were surprised that Starship was a new design in this. I'm kind of weirded out by SpaceX lately, because they seem to be doing this thing where for a while they're talking about how we're going to have one vehicle that does everything, it does it all, and you don't have to have any other vehicles flying. We're the only space vehicle that ever needs to be built because we're the best. And then they won this contract a couple of weeks ago for NASA to send cargo to the Gateway with a thing called Dragon XL. And then they win this thing, and with a new Starship, they seem to be drifting ever so slightly towards just another space company that builds stuff to contract. And I know people are going to be mad at me, but that's what I'm seeing the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, that's kind of... I'm exactly the same. That's why I was surprised. I was thinking, well, yeah, because I just thought Starship, the whole point was you just build one thing that does everything. Flies you to Venus, flies you to Moon, gets you to Saturn.
Wicked parties out by the moon.
Yeah, wicked parties out by the moon for creepy Japanese businessmen.
Oh God, not him again.
So yeah, it's all very, very odd. Yeah, I agree.
No, it's not a bad thing. I think that this is what we all expect from SpaceX at some point, that they take their crazy groundbreaking ideas and then they moderate them over time as they get more real. That's what they've done with like Falcon 9 and all that.
You've been on that beat for a while, Anthony, saying the trend of SpaceX transitioning from feisty startup to establishment space.
Yeah,
company,
they're like the big guy now, and that's cool. Like that's the circle of life. I'm not mad about it, but we got to come to grips with it. They're building stuff to contract.
I mean, I'm still waiting for one piece of Jeff Bezos hardware. When a Blue Origin actually going to do something? But maybe this is it.
Yeah, I mean, the Blue Moon seems like it feels like it has more momentum than some of their other projects, right? Like the thing about New Glenn is I think it's happening in secret, and I just we just haven't seen anything. But like, there's just been little glimpses that like to me indicate, well, okay, they wouldn't have gone so far as to build and cure an entire giant fairing if like they weren't somewhere along with the rest of it too. Anthony, you've been tracking the engine. I guess there's maybe some delays on the engine development, but I think the rocket's probably okay. But Blue Moon is like, now they've got clips, so the robotic landings, and now they have this lunar landing work. Like that architecture seems to be gaining momentum and traction and stuff. And so I feel like it may be one of the early ones that breaks through for them.
So tell us a little bit about that third contender, because that was an odd one as well.
Yeah, this is Dynetics. This is a company that has been around for a while, and they do a lot of work with NASA, but they are very rarely this visible of like a prime competitor. And they have this crazy looking lander that is really low profile, like short, low to the ground, right? Starship, you're coming off on the lunar surface. You got to take an elevator for about 30 minutes to get down to the surface because it's gigantic. This thing is like you're landing right on the surface of the moon. But it's got these little side drop tanks that it launches. Let me see if I can explain this without having any visuals. It launches under a big fairing, but it is attached 90 degrees off of what you would expect to launch a vehicle,
sideways.
right? It's like a sideways thing. And then it launches, gets pushed out to the moon, and it's a really wide, short lander that has 2 tanks on the side of it. And then it is to use those for part of the descent and then throw those tanks off, let them smash into the moon, I guess, maybe go look at the wreckage later, because that would be kind of sweet. And then it lands with just 2 tanks and the little habitation area. They say that this could be a reusable sort of lander. So I wonder if those tanks, you could bring 2 new ones up and attach it later. But it seems like this is going to be a conglomeration of the other contractors that you might know of. So Sierra Nevada, who's building the Dream Chaser for cargo to the ISS, they're apparently going to be on contract for the actual habitation area of that lander, and Dynetics is the prime that's going to integrate all these other companies. So
I think Thales Alenia's got the pressure vessel too.
That makes sense.
They're helping. So
they specialize in can-based pressure vessels. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Metal cylinders is their specialty. Yeah. It's totally like what they call it, a consortium, right? But it's like 25 companies or some crazy thing.
Can we talk about Thales Alenia real quick? I love that the Italians generally have this knack for having these amazing, beautiful designs. They make cars that are incredibly intricate and wonderfully shaped. But Thales Alenia is just like, we make, if you want a can-shaped thing, we'll make one, and you can make it into a space station. You can do a cargo vehicle. You can do a moon lander.
It's inspired by the Tower of Pisa. So
is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a heritage design actually. So.
Oh wow! Yeah, well, they do make everything though. Like when you travel around Europe, you have to go through a Thales Alenia like metal detector and stuff like that.
Is it a circle?
Like they do. Yeah, it is. It's the one where you put your arms out like that.
Yeah, is this one?
Yeah, it really is. Maybe. So yeah, there we go.
Hey Jake, I've got a question about actually it was a tweet that I saw on your your account. Nothing to worry about, but it was actually just a bit of a sad moment. It was Bridenstine saying we're asking people not to travel to the Kennedy Space Center. And I will tell you that makes me sad to even say it. Oh, it is gutting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, things have to change, of course. But, I mean, has that ever been done before, do you think?
I doubt it. Like, I can't think of when that would have happened, but... Yeah. No, it's really sad. And Anthony and I were talking about this earlier, but it's just like, this is such a huge moment. We're talking, of course, about Commercial Crew, right? So May 27th is the launch of Demo Mission 2, which is SpaceX's Dragon capsule, taking actual astronauts to space. So this is the first time that the United States has launched astronauts since...
None of those fake astronauts. We don't need any of those going to space anymore.
Yeah, none of those Ripley dummies anymore, right? So, or what is it, Mannequin Skywalker? So, so this is the first time they've launched astronauts since 2011. It's a big moment for NASA. I was planning to go. Everyone was making big plans for it, and they they deserve to celebrate this. It's a huge achievement, and then... now they have to kind of have this quiet virtual celebration. It's going to be weird. It feels like this should be like a very Apollo moment where there's people in their campers parked along the causeway and stuff, and it's not going to happen. So it's sad.
I was at the launch of Orion in 2014 that didn't have any people on it, was on a Delta IV Heavy, so it wasn't like massive pomp, right? But it was, because it was the first thing that had been this really huge event since 2011 when the shuttle stopped flying. So to think about how crazy it was 3 years after shuttle stopped flying with no people on board, and then to consider what's another 6, and now there's people on board. This would have been, and plus SpaceX, because everyone's crazy about SpaceX and Falcon 9s. This would have been an absolutely insane time on the Space Coast. There would have been millions of people jamming into these towns. If you've ever been to some of these towns, they cannot handle millions of people. They can barely handle the people that are currently there. So it would have been absolutely incredible, and rightfully so. This is the biggest moment for NASA for, a decade. And it's just such a bummer that they, not only can they not fully celebrate it, but they have to be careful about celebrating it to the point where they don't want people to come out and see it. So they've got this like weird, tiptoeing to do around the biggest achievement in their program that they've been waiting for all these years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time coming, hasn't it? I can't believe you saw that test launch, and it's still, and like that was so long ago as well, and you can't possibly have thought then while watching that we would still be sitting here waiting for it.
No, everyone was convinced 2017 was the year we'd be back for SLS at that point. Yeah. And it's like, if you told me then, that morning, December 2014, it'll be at least 2021, 2022, I'd be like, how's this thing going to make it that long? That's insane.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You'll be lucky if it's 2021 now, I reckon.
I would be lucky if it's it's more likely 2022 now for sure. At best.
Yeah. At best, if at all.
That's a lot of time for more delays to happen. So
I want to circle back. So you with those lunar landers, they're not all going to go up on SLS, are they? Well, obviously the SpaceX one isn't.
No, that would be a real achievement to put a Starship on an SLS.
But
A political achievement for sure.
Well, it'd definitely be one we hadn't all guessed.
Yeah, I guess the Dynetics one is apparently capable of SLS, but it's agnostic. I guess they can do it on Vulcan too, I think.
I think they all could launch some components on SLS if required. Of course, there's not really plans for cargo SLS right now, right? They talk about it, but there's no plans in action to build fairings for that big or whatever else that we would need to see. So Vulcan from United Launch Alliance and New Glenn from Blue Origin are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting here. They've got big fairings. They've got each of them have about 13 to 14 tons that they can send to the moon. I have a hard time believing Blue Origin would build some sort of landing system that couldn't be launched on New Glenn to the moon. You know, maybe not the whole thing. They'd probably do the descent and the ascent, the thing that Lockheed Martin's building, and then meet up with the Northrop Grumman tug somewhere else in space. But it's got a 7-meter gigantic fairing. That thing's going to fit under there, no problem.
So yeah, well, that tug might go up on on the Antares one then, presumably.
Not Antares. Don't bring Antares up. I hate Antares. Do you want to get in a fight, Matt?
Trigger word for hands.
So yeah,
Matt,
I knew it was.
Stop upsetting our guests.
No, they launched,
I got him.
They launched Cygnus on an Atlas once, though, didn't they?
Twice.
Ooh,
Twice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know that.
So,
I didn't know that.
So I bet you it'll fit in a Vulcan just fine. Yeah.
The other thing about that is, so the Cygnus-based habitation module is slated to fly to Gateway. That's going to be the main habitation module, and that is apparently going to launch on something else: Falcon Heavy, Vulcan, New Glenn. So Northrop Grumman, like Jake's saying, they do have a knack for making sure that their vehicles can fly on anything. They don't really care how they get there; just make sure you've got enough to put us out to the moon. And they have done a lot of testing in low Earth orbit. They've flown 2 Cygnuses at once. They've let one depart the ISS, kept it up in orbit, sent another one up to the ISS to test how many they could have in space. So they've got a really, really solid spacecraft bus there that can be used however they want it. So I would expect that one to be the most flexible. Even just put me on any old rocket whenever you got a slot, and I'll make my way out to the moon on my own. So I'm less worried about that, and it's more like the Dynetics thing we were talking about. It's a really long lander when you put it under a fairing, so that can't fit under the current Falcon Heavy fairing. Maybe the future super long fairing if that gets built, but you're going to need something with size, and even to that end, you can't really fit it in that cargo area of SLS when Orion's flying either.
Yeah.
Yeah, for some reason, I just thought the Dynetics one was going up on a SLS with the exploration up a stage.
The animation had it on a EUS. So, it looks like that's definitely an option. But I think they specifically said that it could be Vulcan as well. So we'll have to see. I mean, there's more. That's pretty far down the line, right? So I think a lot of the contracting on that will also be in very typical U.S. government fashion. It'll be kind of spread around so that everybody gets a piece, and it'll be sure that it's somewhat fair at least. So I imagine that'll be one of the more driving factors rather than
there was a lot of money splashing around, though, isn't it? Really, just for development money, or is it? I couldn't quite get my head around it because it seemed like SpaceX didn't really. Yeah, but SpaceX didn't seem to get much of it either.
Well, it was up to them how much they wanted to ask for.
I was going to say, like, everyone was kind of like, I saw a few comments that were like, oh, NASA's, chintzing SpaceX out. But I think they write the bid and NASA negotiates it, and then they get what they get. And so,
especially when it's these study kind of things, it's a SpaceX. It's kind of like, well, let's just cover our costs for the next 10 months.
They were doing
somebody
it
works
anyway,
on the
right?
documentation.
So,
they're not going to stop welding stuff together in that field.
No, that's kind of how that's one of their tricks for securing contracts, right? They just lowball you because or lowball themselves, I guess, because they're doing it anyway and they have the funding in some other fashion already. So it's just gravy money.
Yeah, well, it's probably just covers Elon's legal bills and things like that, doesn't it?
Oh God, it must be a fair few quid. But who's going to get hit the most out of this pandemic? I mean, obviously SpaceX and NASA will be okay, but going down the chain, who do you guys think could potentially be in trouble?
ExoMars. Too soon? I don't know. Sorry.
Next you'll be saying OneWeb.
I mean, all the stuff I'm hearing about is like small supply chain people, right? So Anthony, you had a good talk with Peter Beck, right, from Rocket Lab on your show, and you talked about this a little bit and some of the suppliers. So there was that, and there was a piece out from Space News as well about ULA and some of their small suppliers that they had to step in and make sure we're okay, because some of these places are like ma and pa shops, right? So I don't know, Anthony, you want to talk about that?
That's a weird thing that you think of, ULA building these giant rockets that are billions of dollars or whatever, but so many of their parts are built by a company of 10 people. And without these 10 people, you're not going to have a rocket. And it's companies like that are going to have to figure out how to maintain the 10 people that know how to do what they're doing. Yeah. So that's what Peter Beck from Rocket Lab was saying, that they've been buying advance orders from these small places that they know they need to help get through the next couple of months. They bought Sinclair Interplanetary, who makes star trackers and reaction wheels and things like that. So they're trying to use the money they have to make sure their suppliers can make it. And that's fine for Rocket Lab or people that are privately funded that have the money to spend. But ULA specifically is in a weird spot where they are the child company of Boeing and Lockheed Martin. And both of those companies, Boeing's obviously going through plenty of stuff unrelated to the pandemic. Lockheed Martin may be a little bit more secure. But to get either of them to worry about ULA like subcontractors, I don't know what that's like organizationally, politically. That's much more complex than Rocket Lab saying we can fund this small company out of our own pocket that's already been raised by venture capital, and it's totally up to Peter Beck to sign the check.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, I suppose, I mean, that's great, though, isn't it? That the sort of bigger companies that have got an opportunity to sort of help out the little guys.
It is cool to see because, the companies themselves, if that is that 10-person company, they're not only working with Rocket Lab, they're probably working with a lot of other space startups that you know and love. And the space industry is very tiny. So, especially on the smaller end of things. And anytime that you've got somebody with some cash in the bank like Rocket Lab, Relativity recently raised $200 million. These companies can probably prop up the smaller end that helps prop up the companies that we haven't mentioned yet. So it's weird how much everyone's working with everybody, but hopefully they can get through it together because, we all agree that space is something that's worth doing. And if it were to all kind of die out, that's pretty big bummer. Penn and Teller's probably not going to be back in Las Vegas for a while, but hopefully they'll probably be fine. But I don't know that Rocket Lab will.
I think so. Yeah, it's a good call.
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy time, isn't it? You just don't know what the kind of downstream effects of any of this will really be, I suppose. I mean, I guess.
Yeah, we're still early, right? We're just kind of in phase one, which is stop the bleeding, right? So
yeah.
Now we gotta heal.
Let's face it. Presumably, it's not a given, is it, that a nation like America, and Anthony could probably talk more about this, but it will, in afterwards, if we spiral into a recession or worse, a depression, then obviously things like lunar landings and things like that do seem a little bit over the top.
I kind of go back and forth now. I'll give you my Canadian perspective now, but
trying to sell robotic arms. Watch out for this guy.
We'll give you a great deal. But on one hand, you might think like that NASA is discretionary spending, and therefore it's going to get cut. And just kind of the way the U.S. budget system works, that's in a lot of ways true, right? Because just the Commerce and Justice, whatever subcommittee that runs NASA is going to get a smaller piece of pie. But on the other hand, NASA is also like the perfect kind of sort of infrastructure stimulus that you want when you're trying to reboot an economy. And so Apollo did a lot to sort of kickstart, a lot of industry, and they may want to do that again. And so I feel like it's kind of could go either way right now, where NASA could have really stark austerity and they'll cut back, or they'll get a huge injection of money. And Artemis will be something that takes part in sort of the American revival post-pandemic, right?
Okay, let me burst the bubble for all of you.
Oh, come on! I was just living in a little.
No. It's bursting the bubble that you think that we ever spend less money. We don't spend less money in America. What we do is we stop spending money as fast. So 10 years ago, we had this sequestration thing that didn't cut defense funding. That cut the amount that it could be raised every year. We don't ever spend less money. I don't want to get too political here, but we have zero history of ever dropping our national budget. We increase it. We're spending money like crazy right now. We're spending trillions of dollars, no problem. It's going to be fine. NASA's going to get funded, especially things that fly on rockets. We love spending money for things that fly on rockets because most of our industry at some point can be sourced to Boeing or Lockheed. Like it's going to trickle all the way down to these defense contractors because they make so much of what goes on in our country, and they fund, like we're saying with these small suppliers, they fund so many of these companies. Look at SLS; it gets touted as saying we're propping up 50 states worth of small companies. It's ripe for putting cash into the economy. So we're not going to be cutting any funding here in the near future.
Yeah, so actually, it's quite that's a very hopeful message. I quite like it, and
I mean, it's hopeful for you as the guy who doesn't have to pay taxes in America. But for me, it's maybe a little bit more complex than that. Yeah.
It's not a very hopeful message for all the smaller government people, right? So.
Yeah, totally.
But has that message of how much every dollar that gets spent on NASA, how much it gives back to the taxpayer? Presumably that's stayed pretty good as a good bit of maths.
I think the return on investment has never really been a deciding factor in NASA's budget, though.
I know, it seems a little bit unfair.
Okay, but this is over here where we're spending money like crazy. We only have to argue with ourselves to spend money. Everybody over there, you've got to argue with everybody else over there that's in totally different situations, and there's some very heavy space countries that have been really hard hit, like Italy. And I wonder how much, this is really fruitful timing for ESA that you just did the every 3 year thing that you do, the ministerial. Yeah. So you've got your budget sort of sorted out. Is that something that is untouchable at this point, or does that feel like something that could really get shaken up with all this?
I reckon it's pretty untouchable. Yeah, I reckon that is what it is, isn't it? And because all the nations agree to it, and I can't imagine them all having to sit back round the table and renegotiate it all.
I mean, I don't know the policy in detail, but I imagine there's some sort of mechanism, like in it, with a deciding vote by the council, that they could say, hey, we fall back to a 10% less or something because of weird times. There's got to be some, like, they can't just. I don't think anyone would agree to just like commit themselves without fault for 3 years.
No, well, but I mean, there's got to be some huge extra spending now, like the delays on ExoMars. That presumably wasn't in the plan. Although I think they were pretty. I think they knew by that point that it was in serious trouble. I always thought that the COVID excuse was just a bit of an excuse, that they always thought that the parachutes are just a disaster.
Yeah, and the good sort of evidence for that is that those parachute tests were supposed to be January, and then they slipped to February, and they're like, oh, we're really close, and then it was like, okay, it's gonna be early March, and then it was like, actually we're gonna delay for 26 months, and then the parachute test jumped all the way to the fall. It was like boom, October, like right away. Like, okay, yeah, you were not ready for that.
yeah, not even close. It's not even close, and it's like so that's going to be significant extra spending right there.
Yeah, I think I heard something like $500 million dollars. I think so, whatever that is in euros, right? But
it's about the same, isn't it? It's not too far.
Yeah, maybe not too far off, but it's not cheap to store these planetary missions for like it's, and I had a lot of questions about that, and because I was trying to figure out what it would cost to see if it would have big impacts, and you go back to Galileo was a kind of one of the more recent examples where we had to do that. I guess not most recent, but it's a good kind of example of what happens when you have to just park it because it's done but doesn't have a launch ready to go, and it was like $70 to $100 million a year to store that thing, because even just the storage facilities are like $2-3 million a month. Like it's gross, like how much.
Yeah.
And then just keeping everybody kind of on staff, because you don't want to lose that talent. All these engineers and scientists are like ready to go with this mission. You don't want them taking other jobs, so you have to keep them on payroll for 2 years so that they stick around, right?
Well, you can imagine that there's a node of the ISS with the European robotic arm. I know you don't want to hear this, Jake, but there is a European robotic arm, and that's in a crate somewhere, knocking up a big storage bill.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and especially with like ExoMars, which is like it's an astrobiological mission, right? So there's a cleanliness standard you need to keep with it too, and it's mental. So
the good part is that you have 2 years extra to make sure that your drill works. on this rover, right? Because this is the one with the drill on it. I'm not confusing these.
This is that 2-meter drill. It's like
so you can learn from our collective mistake of DLR and Insight over here. Figure out, make sure your drill works.
That's like a whole other like host of technical risk, though, right? Because
it's a whole other.
It is.
Good.
It's a whole other.
Good.
That drill is mental though. Like it's like it comes in pieces, and so you drill one piece down, and then you have to the arm moves the second bit, connects it, and then it goes down. And the connection is not just like a threaded screw. It's actually got electrical and data transmission connections between it because there's sensors all the way down the drill. It's a really complicated piece of technology, and that's probably the one I'm most worried about. If ESA can third time the charm land this thing, then I'm more worried just actually some of these instruments working, because they are not simple instruments.
Well, I mean, let's face it. That with all these delays, I mean, that rover, the Franklin rover, was supposed to be wasn't even supposed to be 2018. It was supposed to be 2016 originally.
It might have even been 14 before that.
Yeah,
I think
or
it's bounced
14.
a couple times. Yeah,
yeah. And you think, well, yeah, and then it's going 2022, and only the Americans have landed on Mars without excessive litho braking.
Well, wait a minute. What country are you sitting in right now? You got one down there.
Yeah, you guys technically landed. Yeah,
I'll give you credit. That's half credit.
Yeah, we
screwed up the solar panels, but what are you going to
do? That's really depressing. The fact that it landed almost deployed, and everyone just said, it was smashed to pieces. No, it actually landed. That's...
Jake, I would like,
totally
if
gutting.
you could you, considering the fact that we are an international collection of people here working on a sample return mission, if you're comfortable with it, can you roll out your full theory about how this delay impacts NASA's and ESA's sample return at Mars?
This is good.
Yeah, there's a little bit of risk there, right? So,
Always Sunny. We were talking about Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Have you seen the episode where Charlie Kelly has the map of the whole workspace on his wall with pins and stuff pointing everywhere? His whole theory. This is Jake's Charlie Kelly theory about sample return.
I love it. You go ahead,
it's not
Jake.
that much of a crazy theory, but okay. So the basic idea would be that so the ExoMars rover is delayed. So we've got now ESA's got to cover many hundreds of euros, hundreds of millions of euros. Mixing all my zeros up there. Many hundreds of millions of euros they need to cover in their budget over the next 2 years. And so the question is, where does that money come from, right? And so does that, do they find new money for that, which is not always easy, or do they trim the fat in other places? And one of those areas, especially because it's in the same portfolio, would be the Fetch rover for the sample return, because ESA is also building the small little rover that will fly on mission 2, land on the surface, go pick all the samples up, and take it back to NASA's little Ascent rocket. So if that gets pushed out, that could be a problem, because then you move a whole other window for the second mission. And the second mission is also has to go in tandem with the third mission, which is ESA. So there's a knock-on budget effect there. And that orbiter that goes for mission 3 is part of the communications infrastructure for the whole mission. They're running, NASA is running out of assets at Mars for return communications, right? It's getting old, so Mars Odyssey is coming up on 20 years now. All that stuff is pretty long in the tooth, and the samples, we're talking late 2020s here. So can these things last another 10 years? And so if that gets pushed out, and now NASA doesn't have a communications vehicle in that really, really critical window, do they have to scramble now and go and come up with another mission? And you've actually seen that. So in the NASA budget request, there is something called Mars Ice Mapper, which has been touted as a little bit it's this weird mission where its purpose is not really in one category. It's it's a little bit of a science mission. Oh, we can do some polar study, but it's also it's for finding water for people. Well, when we send people there, we need to find the water. So now it's part of human exploration, and it's also a communications asset to fill the gap. So there's this whole cascading effect all the way down all of the Mars 2020, Mars sample return architecture, and all of ESA stuff that could happen from this. Now, Jan Werner actually got out ahead of that in his press release for the delay of ExoMars and said, don't worry, we have the money from somewhere else. Nothing's going to get delayed. And I saw NASA as well. Thomas Zurbuchen was, who's the head of the science mission director there. He was really heavy on the messaging, like everything's okay, nothing's gonna, to me, seeing them come out ahead of that and really try and lay that messaging down tells me there's actual risk there. So, it'll be.
Yeah, was that before or after Jan Werner was like, I'm not going to be the ESA guy anymore?
He's been on again, off again for another term for a while. So he's like it's like Schrodinger's
Werner. How many umlauts can you put in this title?
Yeah, probably born in the same town, or were they?
Yeah.
So well, that's a lot of detective work right there. That's good. But what have you factored in a Chinese or an Indian rescue on that front?
I have not factored that in. No.
Well, you never know, because they might have some assets out there and sort of say, we can.
I'm really excited for the Chinese Mars mission, but I also recognize it's their first one, so I'm not like holding my breath that it's a locked in success. So.
But won't they have? They'll have an orbiter there, though, won't they?
Yeah, it's sort of like a Viking style mission. So it's like an orbiter with a lander rover combo. Also, all these 3 spacecraft will fly there, enter orbit on Mars. They'll do some mapping first, and then once they've kind of locked in where they're going to land, the lander and rover will detach and descend to the surface. So it's sort of a delayed, like as opposed to Mars 2020, which just flies on its own, goes right into the atmosphere, and never breaks for orbit, right? It just crashes into the planet and lands. So it'll be interesting.
Well, hopefully not crashes.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say that's going to be the best with the helicopter. Right?
Oh yeah,
a Mars helicopter.
It's the best. Ingenuity. They got a name now, right?
Yeah.
So
This week. Yeah.
I'm so excited for that. I mean, and so I will always tell this story whenever someone asks me about it. But like, this is like Sojourner. So back in 1996, 7. I'm getting my years mixed up. 1997, I think, is when the Pathfinder mission landed, and it was supposed to be just like it's a lander. It was a science mission that landed on the surface, a stationary lander with a little turret on top. It took pictures, measured the weather.
Not a turret? Holy shit.
Yeah. It was a little simple thing. But the technology guys got a little side project attached to it, which is this like cheap little tiny 6-wheeled rover called Sojourner that was like bolted on the side, and it was not part of the science mission. It was like a whole separate budget line. It was a technology demonstration, and there were even some scientists that were mad about its inclusion because it just added complexity and risk to the mission, and they were afraid it was going to compromise some of the science. But they got it through anyway, landed this thing. Sojourner worked perfectly. It was this adorable little rover, and all the stuff after that, Spirit, Opportunity, Curiosity, were because of that little rover. So that's how important it was, right? And this helicopter to me is that for aerial vehicles. This will be the first little tech demo that attaches to a science mission. Yeah, I don't know. It might fly for a week and then crash, but it's going to demonstrate what we can do on Mars. And who knows what the next 20, 30 years of planetary exploration could be because of this. I'm so excited for it. I'm just like jazzed.
Well, it might be the end of rovers. I mean, what's the point if you can get really good aerial landers?
I think you kind of want both, right? Yeah, I think like a tandem mission is going to be, the next rover, like more complete aerial vehicle combination pair, like some sort of like Gemini robotic mission of some sort would be awesome. Like having this little thing scout for you and find all the kind of places to help direct the rover will be just fantastic. And just getting the pictures of the rover from the air and the pictures of the helicopter from the rover will be
it'll be insane.
SciComm gold for the next.
Matt, is it because you're upset about the Franklin rover? I think that's where it's come from.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we're all pretty upset about the Franklin
Jamie
rover.
Particularly.
Just give us a chance. Just give us a chance.
He gets a rover named after him, and he's like,
I know.
Look, all I want to know, and this is the really big question, is Jake and Anthony, what are your predictions? I want a year from you both of when we're finally going to land on Europa, drill down the 10-meter ice, and find a whalian.
A whalian?
Oh my God.
These are the dreams. These are my reoccurring dreams I keep telling Matthew about. He doesn't care. But what year do you reckon? If that was to happen, when would it happen?
Jake's going to wait me out here.
Oh man,
he's waiting out for me to make this
That's a tough
prediction.
one, man. Like I think
it's tough, isn't it?
I mean, that's pretty far fetched. I'm not going to lie. And
I think the mission is far fetched. I don't think whalians are far fetched. I'm all in on whalians.
You've just got to entertain me.
we might invent some way to just look underneath the ice with some sort of instrument from orbit before that happens.
Oh, so you don't think it's even going to be a drill?
I don't think we've drilled. What is the Europa ice crust thickness?
I think it's 10 meters.
I think it's,
I think it's like 10 kilometers.
I think it's like 60 kilometers. Like,
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Ignore me.
There might be like a crack you can get in,
I don't think we've drilled that far on Earth yet.
You've said that before.
which we can send the Franklin crack.
I know we don't have like good track records with moles right now, but I think a mole is actually a better. Yeah, if you could get imagine you had this like a mole that was heated, right? And so you power it, like put a bunch of like RTGs on the surface that power. You could send the heat down and electricity down to this thing. It heats up and just kind of melts its way through the ice all the way down. It pulls a tether behind it. You can take 60 kilometers of tether, I guess, and some way to do that. And then it could just go down into the water, turns into a submersible, and then goes around, right? So you could keep the tether, so you could keep your radio connection, and then it's kind of like self-perpetuating. That's I think the way you'd want to go on Europa.
I like it. I've just been Googling the thickness of the ice, around 15 to 25 kilometers. Yeah, I was a little bit off.
10 meters.
I like your gumption here, though. I got a question. Here's my theory for how to get through this. Do we know what the Europa ice and ocean consists of? Can we turn it into rocket propellant in any way?
Well, it's water, isn't it?
It's water.
Is it
it's
water?
Well,
They
think it's
All
salt
right,
water.
I've got it.
Super salty.
I've got it. Yeah. We send an RL-10 engine. We land the engine, stick a couple of pipes in, turn it into rocket fuel, and just burn the engine until we're down.
That's a rocket engineer solution.
Yeah, we've got rocket engines. We haven't built drills that can go 15 kilometers on their own, but we've got rocket engines that can melt their way through this whole thing.
Or just a starship hovering.
Yeah, just burn the engines
for months on end. Just
and then it goes into submarine mode, and we're right in.
What's the longest we've continually fired a rocket engine for?
You can get that Vasimir thing, right? That thing's crazy. It doesn't really put out much heat, I don't think.
Yeah, solar electric. Yeah,
that's like,
Anthony. I'm
that's
worried.
Just like holding
I'm worried
a torch.
about contamination. I'm worried about contamination. I'm worried also that you're gonna burn and kill the very first whalian. That pops its head up and goes, "Oh, who's that? It's a visitor from another planet."
I tell you what,
and then instantly melted.
Elon Musk would not give a monkeys about that, though, would he?
He wouldn't. He wants to blow Mars up.
He just who knows? He don't give a monkeys.
We could test the Mars nuke on Europa.
That'd be a big one.
Don't upset me.
Yeah. I think we're not going to go to Europa to find whalians anytime soon.
No, I wouldn't hold your breath.
Okay. Well, I always thought that I would die in 2059. And
exploring for whalians. He's like, that's a good window to get me there. I could drill into the surface and die with a whalian.
I reckon we'll be close.
Nice.
I'll be 79.
79 when they discover whalians. I think.
And then I'll be happy. I'll be like, great, I can die now. See you later.
I think submarine on Titan will come first.
Yeah, I'm in on that.
A
love
methane
Titan.
lake submarine. That's the one I'm going for.
Man, Titan is really just like the right environment to come up with wacky vehicles.
Man.
Like, it's just awesome.
Well, like send an astronaut to just fly around.
Yeah,
with,
just give him
pair of
cardboard
wings.
Yeah.
Man, I'd be totally.
Imagine we got excited about our Titan special, didn't we, Matt? I mean, what was it? Ice volcanoes. I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, that's it. Titan gets my vote, Jamie. Forget Europa. Just forget it now.
Agree. Hard agree.
I can't.
Hey, we're going there with this giant quadcopter.
It's okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, exactly, yeah.
Quadcopter.
In 2037 or something.
Yeah. Shortly before the whalians are discovered.
Yeah, not too.
For 2037, read 2047. I'm going to be pretty close to carking it at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all right for you lot.
Yeah, it's not soon, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's
Definitely
always
not
the
soon.
depressing thing reading about these things. We're going to have to wrap this up. I'm amazed Zoom gave us a little present halfway through that and said, "Oh, you can have a little bit longer."
They must have known. They heard our conversation. They're
This
like,
is
this is
pretty
good
important
content.
stuff.
I've got to keep this going.
Interplanetary fans, yeah.
That's what it is.
Well, I was thinking actually when Jake was saying that it was something he'd been looking at on the podcast, and that NASA had obviously been doing studies about it as well. I was thinking maybe NASA studies are actually just getting people to listen to Off Nominal and MECO and a Wee Martian podcast.
We are not getting our money's worth if that's true.
That is their studies. Because that's how I do it.
If so, we got to get these Patreon numbers up. If that's the case.
Yeah. Can we land one of those fat NASA contracts for that? That would be great.
Oh, exactly. Imagine that, a podcast with a fat NASA contract.
Hey, if there's anyone from NASA listening, I'm available.
So talking of podcasts, we should really, Matt, I can't believe that there's any of our listeners that won't know Jake and Anthony's work. But guys, for any new listeners that would like to check out your work or can help support you in these tough times, where can they go to?
So I do a show called We Martians. It's about Mars exploration, which is why I perk up whenever you talk about Mars stuff. You can get it at wemartians.com, and I publish every 2 to 3 weeks. Usually try and do interviews and stuff. So I've got some good ones coming out this week. There's an engineer from JPL coming on to talk about Mars 2020 and some of the processes they're going through getting that thing ready for launch. So yeah, I do kind of fun stuff like that. Anthony's got a show as well.
Yeah, it's called Main Engine Cutoff, mainenginecutoff.com. It's mostly the first half of what we talked about, rockets and politics and budgets and all that kind of stuff. Quarantine, great time to have guests on. They're all sitting at home, bored, so I've just been hitting people up.
No excuses,
So we've got the last 3 shows have been Peter Beck from Rocket Lab, Tim Ellis from Relativity, and Sean Mahoney from Maston, talking about rockets. And in the case of Maston, we're talking about their contract to land robotically on the moon. So it's been a good time. And then Jake and I do Off Nominal, which you two have been on. Unfortunately,
Yes.
you filled in for me when I was in Europe, and you filled in. This is a whole screwy thing that was like a year or 2 ago.
Yeah. Off Nominal is really fun. It's a once a month kind of thing, and it's basically no rules. Anthony and I just kind of crack a beer, and sometimes we bring on friends. Sometimes we just kind of make stuff up ourselves, and just the last episode was really fun. Actually, we talked about space logos. It was so we try to do weird stuff like that, where we just pick a bizarre topic, but just talked about different kind of imagery in space, and what's good and what's bad and what's weird and what's going on. So it was
specifically
it was
for the European audience, how bad the Aryan space logo used to be.
Yeah.
There's some pretty cruddy logos out there. It was quite funny because I did not get that excited about the NASA worm, but then I listened to your Off Nominal episode where you had got very excited about it, and I was thinking, oh no, I feel really bad now.
Yeah,
I feel really bad. That
Anthony's enthusiasm for the worm is infectious. So
I've got a whole book here. This is a visual prop.
I know. Yes, I've seen that, but that does look amazing.
All of the design aesthetic decisions around the worm. How do you put it on trucks and pickup trucks and all sorts of good stuff.
Yeah, I've seen that. That book is epic. That is so nerdy.
When's the worm tattoo coming?
That's a good question.
I was going to say, yeah, that's
a really good question.
That's not a bad selection.
I'll get that. Jake's got to get the Canadarm on his forearm.
This is it.
Oh, yeah.
Post-lockdown, we'll all get our space tattoos.
You guys can get the old Aryan space logo.
Oh, yeah, definitely. On my face.
as punishment.
Back to front.
with that brutal arrow right on your forehead.
Yeah, and the huge drop shadow.
Oh, God. Canadarm would be brilliant, wouldn't it? Because you could have it as a sleeve.
Oh,
you could have the whole, you could really,
yeah.
You could go to town on that. You should totally do it.
But white is not a great tattoo color, though.
No. But you could go for a dirty Canadarm.
Dirty Canadarm.
You dirty Canadarm.
That's my favorite drink.
A dirty Canadarm.
Oh, yes, that would be...
Dirty Canadarm. It's a Molson Canadian with a shot of Alberta Dry in it, and someone else gives it to you with their arm.
And Letterkenny's on it.
Yeah. And someone does
you drink it, and you
top.
go pap, pap on the table when you're done.
Oh. Well, on that note, we've got a recipe for a drink. I don't know if we can get anything more squeeze anything more out of a podcast than that. Particularly, it's a very suitable drink as well for drinking when you hear the name Elon Musk as well. I think.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You guys
well,
still do
thank you
that?
so much, guys. What a joy getting you on. We've got to do this more regularly, haven't we, Matt?
Oh no, absolutely.
But that said, we'll see you next year.
Yeah, totally.
The Interplanetary Podcast, putting the ace back into space.
Loved that chat, Jamie. It was good fun, wasn't it?
Aren't they lovely? We did say that we're going to do it more regularly. Let's see if we
Absolutely.
stick to that.
Jamie, what can people do other than like and subscribe at all the various channels, like particularly iTunes? Great if you write us a lovely review on iTunes.
That would be
That'd be
nice.
absolutely fantastic. If you go over to the Space Store, you can still watch our
Still watch our live show.
from
They have it on
there,
YouTube.
on YouTube,
But
Space Store Live.
You really need to get yourself down to www.interplanetary.org.uk. Everything's there, including news on how you become a Patreon. I know we bang on about it, but I mean, why don't you join the club?
Absolutely, and we've had some new patrons this week. Welcome aboard.
Welcome. Hope you're finding the water lovely and warm.
Bye bye, Spud Cats.
Goodbye.